So we really hope you enjoyed this session and are able to catch others today as well. Thank you very much, and I'm going to hand over to Luke now.
Excellent. Hi everybody, and it's really great to be here at Social Work Week 2021. Some of you may have heard me speak before. It's good to have already heard some old friends and familiar faces that have been sending me messages saying that they're coming to this event. So really good to see people that I already know. Even though I can't see you, you can see me. And it's really nice to be speaking to a new audience of people. So I will share my presentation now, and hopefully that will all work. Brilliant. So this presentation is called Living a Careless Life. Some of you may have heard this speech before, but this particular format is different to what you've heard before. So this speech has actually never been done before publicly. So I really hope that you enjoy this new material, and I'll get into it. So there's three things we're going to look at today. Number one is the illusion of participation. Number two is the impact of statutory participation. And number three is how participation can transform lives. And when I'm talking about participation here, I'm talking about how young people engage in services that are there to support them. But who am I? My name's Luke Rodgers. I'm the Director of Strategy at the Care Leaders. I have a special interest in social entrepreneurship, so I support local authorities to develop projects that benefit children in care and care leavers. I've won a few awards with the work, and I most recently was asked to be a fellow at the University of Oxford within the Syed Business School. So the illusion of participation. I think more often than not within our sector, we often confuse consultation with participation. Consultation is the process of formally engaging with something, where participation is the process of actually engaging with many different things. And there's three particular ways in which we usually do consultation within our sector. Verbal consultation. We usually ask people to share their views on how they feel about a particular topic. And here's the Education Select Committee's example of verbal communication consultation in 2014.
I think it's again, it's down to that child's individual needs. We really need to take a step before they go into residential home to make sure that that place is right for the child.
Adam, do you anything from your perspective, do you think?
Sorry about that. I was going to ask Adam as well, what you seem to describe.
So the second way in which we engage with young people is through written consultation. And I want to share another example from the Children's Commissioner's Office looking at the fostering stocktake. So these questions were given to local authorities and organisations and asked to go and find young people and hear their views on fostering. The person asking these questions wasn't allowed to know the child. And just to draw your attention to two questions, how many foster families have you had in the last 2 years? Prompt reasons for moving. And if you have contact with your birth parents, do you have the right amount, too much or too little? So that would be like me asking you if you've had a divorce and why, and not taking any consideration whatsoever about the background of your parents and whether they're still with us or not. And then finally is group consultation. We tend to bring people together to communicate about their experience with the idea of that making a difference. But as we all know, with this particular one, the wording can be somewhat crass. And we tend not to think about it because sometimes just by changing one simple word, we can really change the way in which we perceive consultation and engagement. So why am I telling you this and why am I showing you these examples? Well, quite simply, participation is often an unchallenged culture. The most common phrase that I hear from services is that we struggle to engage with our young people. The first example of Adam, who walked out of the room, quite obviously that young person was not prepared for what he was walking into. The most common phrase I hear from young people is quite simple. This is boring. That questionnaire that we saw, there's nothing engaging, exciting about young people being involved in that. And some of those questions we don't even need to ask young people because we capture data around it. So what should we be saying? Well, it's quite simple. We need to provide more meaningful opportunities that engage all of our young people. So what's the impact of statutory participation? If we're looking at consultation as the way to kind of get young people's views to change services, which is what we ultimately want to achieve, what about when young people have to engage with services? What about their statutory obligation to engage with services? And what I'm talking about here is school. I'm talking about looked after children's reviews, and I'm talking about just children's social care in general. But before I go into this part of the presentation, I actually want to hear from you. Now, I want you to use the chat function to tell me what language we use when talking about children in care. Now, your answers can't be seen by anybody else. And I just want to do this as an illustrative process. So if you can just use your chat function now, and I just want you to write down words that we use when speaking about children in care. And I'm just going to give you 60 seconds to do that. Or maybe 30 seconds actually, because it doesn't take very long to write one word. So, okay. So I can't see what you've written. So this is a bit of a challenge actually. We can pick this up at the end and see if I'm right. We inherit words and language when in this sector. Completely inherit so much stuff. We inherit things like lack, known to agencies, mental health difficulties, risk of permanent exclusion, sexualized behaviour, challenging behaviour, high risk of, and CP. Now I can't see it, but I can guarantee, because I do this activity a lot, that a lot of the words that you've written mirror what I've written here. And what have we demonstrated here? That we have an unconscious bias. Now, unconscious bias, lots of people talk about it at the moment. I'm really sorry, let me just close that Teams down. I can't do that. So, yeah, unconscious bias is something where the words that we inherit within our sector alter the way in which we behave towards children. And I want to just bring something into this space here to say that you inherit systems. You inherit the system that I've just explained when we talk about participation as consultation, and you also inherit the culture within our organisation that chooses words to communicate about young people in particular ways. So at this point, I want to introduce Sam. Sam's our story that we're going to use today, and Sam is it's the collection of 3 people's stories here at the Care Leaders. So everybody at the Care Leaders is a leader with lived experience, both personal experience of care and professional experience working in the sector. So Sam dislikes food. He likes food, dislikes adults, he's very clever. He thinks you were born yesterday. He's compassionate but doesn't know it. He says talking about your feelings is stupid. He's very capable if he applies himself. He's a keen interest in getting in trouble, and people think he's got attachment issues. But most importantly, he's the reason that you're here today. Everybody knows a Sam. So Sam, like lots of young people in the UK, enters care. And I want to share with you the story of Sam's journey into care. Sam was at school and told a friend about his stepdad being abusive to him at home. "Come home with me tonight," said his friend. Sam was absolutely petrified at this point about his disobedience towards his stepdad. When he went back to his friend's house, the first thing that his friend's mum said to him was, "You are safe here." And Sam felt incredibly safe. There was something in the tone of this person's voice that made him feel really safe. Then the police arrived and spoke to Sam. He was then told that it was unsafe to see your parents. Sam spent 3 nights with his friends, and on the morning of the 4th day, he was taken out of his class by the receptionist. She opened the door, popped her head through, and she said across the classroom, "There's someone here to see you, Sam." Sam could tell by her tone of voice something was wrong and he was really scared. And she responded by saying the things that lots of us say, there's nothing to worry about. But Sam was worried. Sam walked into a room. He sees someone with a neutral posture. He sees a lady who is very neat and tidy. Someone has an anxious smile. He recognizes that someone is really stressed. A lady looks at him with a nurturing presence. He sees unfamiliar concern. There's a man who is dominant, serious, and scary. He sees someone who fills him with joy. He becomes very confused. And he panics. Sam, can you come and sit down, please? This is a serious meeting. We all know what meeting Sam's walked into. All of these new people in Sam's life, all they're feeling, the environment that Sam can feel is palpable, and young people that are in positions of survival, like our young Sam here, become incredibly hypersensitive. They can pick up the smallest nuances in behaviour in the most remarkable way, which I'm sure you all realise. But language is really important here. And this is a serious meeting, sets a tone for Sam to become somewhat petrified knowing the position that he's in. Sam's left home, being disobedient against someone that's potentially abusive, and now he's in a room full of people that a lot of them he doesn't know. We need to ask you some questions, Sam. He feels the seriousness in the tone of voice, and he doesn't feel safe. So then what happens after the serious meeting? Well, if it's in school, we can quite often ask this question. Sam, you okay going back to class? Yeah, sure, why not? So let's look at school and Sam's participation within school. We call this the 2 times tables. Now, with young people in care and young people in school, even though they both sit under the Department for Education, you know as well as I do that these systems somewhat clash. There's different approaches within schools in terms of behavioural management policies and structures. Lots of schools operate in different ways, as do local authorities. Information sharing between schools can be challenging sometimes for many different reasons. And there are lots of issues within school and social care independently. But when you try and put these 2 systems together, which I'm going to demonstrate now, it can often clash and create issues for the young person. So I'm going to explain this part of the presentation from the perspective of a teacher or teachers, and then the second part of the perspective of this presentation to be from Sam's. So Sam's late on a Monday morning. Maths teacher comes up to Sam and says, Sam, why are you late? Sam shrugs his shoulders, puts his head down and walks and sits into his seat. And teacher says, Sam, detention on Thursday. Okay. Young person's late, put them in detention. It's a standard behavioural policy. Then can you imagine what it's like on Tuesday when Sam doesn't bring his homework for the same maths teacher, and when the maths teacher says, Sam, why have you not brought me your homework? You were probably seeing your friends this weekend when you should have been doing your homework. And Sam has this outburst, he loses it, swears at his teacher. Teacher goes to the staff room and says, I cannot believe what Sam did today. He was late on Monday and he swore at me on Tuesday. Now the whole school knows who Sam is. doesn't bring his PE kit on a Wednesday, but the authoritative PE teacher has already decided that Sam's a bad kid because he's heard about what he said to his maths teacher and makes Sam sit on the step instead of playing rugby, his favourite game. It's raining. Sam knows that there's lost property PE kit. Sam swears at his teacher. Sam doesn't show up to his detention. Sam's more likely getting expelled or suspended now. And obviously he was seeing his friends on this weekend when he should have been doing his homework. Schools often don't have the right information about the young people that they have in care, and there's loads of reasons for that, which I'm not going to get into. It's not about the detail today. But not every teacher knows who their children in care are. Not every teacher is trained on attachment. Not every teacher understands what it's like to be in care. And lots of teachers may not even know the difference between a foster home and residential care because the development opportunities haven't been provided to them. So when that happens, we lose a perception. We lose the ability to put ourselves in a young person's shoes who's come from care and think differently. Like, if you understand the systems around care, if you understand what it's like for young people in care, just that understanding will alter the way in which you think, and the way in which you think informs how you act. Understanding about young people like Sam, it's just as important to learn things like attachment as it is if a young person's got a nut allergy in your school and everybody learns how to use an EpiPen. So let's go back to our timetable and see what really happened. So Sam's been in care for approximately 5 years, let's say, at this point. And he wasn't seeing his friends on the weekend at all. He was having contact or family time with his mum on a Sunday. But he sees his dad on a Saturday as well. And Sam's quite upset by this because he can't see his friends because he has to see his mum and his dad. And his dad says bad things about his mum on Saturday and his mum says bad things about his dad on Sunday, and all he can think about it is he needs to ring his social worker to talk to her about it on a Monday morning. Sam's social worker starts work after Sam starts school. Sam thinks about it all day. There's this wonderful thing in this space is if anybody in this room goes through divorce, bereavement or loss, you can take compassion leave. We don't have compassion leave for young people. We have a system that encourages young people to go to school over their mental health in some occasions. Sam's late again on a Tuesday with his drama teacher. It's his head of school. His head of school says to him, head of year, sorry, says, Sam, is everything okay? Sam says, no, sir, it's not. He says, what do you need? I need to ring my social worker. He says, okay, go into my office, call 9 for an outside line. Guaranteed the head of year regretted that. I mean, when the Domino's pizza started getting delivered to school, he was like, don't. Says, Sam, what do you think you're doing swearing at teachers? That's unacceptable. You need to be punished, Sam, because I need to show these teachers that I'm the boss, because you'll be someone's boss one day, but at the same time, you need to know that's not acceptable. I recognise that what you're going through is difficult, but doing that is not okay. Put me in isolation. So he used to. So he used to get put in isolation, and he used to tap on the wall to the kid next to him, send notes underneath the divider. I love isolation, by the way, when schools have got really clever inclusion policies, but isolation room slap bang in the middle. And Sam's head of year used to come in, we'll call him Bob. He used to remove every other young person and say, Sam, I want to talk to you about your life. Sam used to hate this because every time someone talked to him about his life, it'd always be negative stuff. There'd always be things about previous childhood trauma. So I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about your future. What do you want to be when you grow up? Nothing, sir. Just want to get on with my algebra. Apparently it's a really important life skill. Well, that's what people keep telling me. It's all right. Well, have you ever thought about the forces? You keep tapping on that wall to those kids next to you. It's like Morse code, is that, mate? No, thanks, sir. I'm not interested. Oh, okay. You've thought about, like, you realise we can teach you how to fly. You can fly all around the world, like to different countries. And when you come home from the forces, you could be a commercial pilot, and you can use that altruism that I see you've got, Sam, and you can fly people abroad. And Sam's like, what's altruism, sir? And Sam's like, and Sir's like, well, altruism is where you put other people before yourself, which you do all the time, Sam. You just don't realise. Sam feels a little bit of warmth, but doesn't like it. He's suspicious of it. Sam thinks it's easier to hate people when they're gone they miss somebody that you love. Bob sees this, Bob recognises it, and Bob doesn't give up. He says, well, Sam, think about it like this, mate. They teach you how to play rugby properly. They teach you how to be a coach. You could fly all over the world to different countries and play rugby with different countries. And Sam's like, what, sir? We don't just blow people up. And Sir's like, no, only when we're at war, Sam. And hopefully you'll never see that. But we're actually friends with other countries and we do play sports with them. And he says, so despite all of this bravado that you're doing now, I know you're listening to me. He says, because I come and watch you every single Saturday. And when you score a try, I'm the first person that you look for. So whether you're hiding this now or ignoring me or whatever, I know you're listening. Bob used to come and watch Sam every single Saturday play rugby. Bob had nothing to do with the rugby team. Physics. Sam's got looked after children's review. He gets pulled out of his class. He's got told there's nothing to worry about, and then gets asked to go back to class once he's had these difficult conversations about his latest sexual experience and what identity means to him. He obviously doesn't go to biology. Doesn't show up to his detention. We still don't know why Sam didn't bring his PE kit though. Because while the foster care and the social worker are in a debate about who buys it and where the budget comes from, Sam's not got it. So let's look at Sam being in care for 3 years. So we're going to go back a little bit. He's got supervised contact with his mum. He's got no contact whatsoever with his stepdad. Death threats have come from his dad. He's been moved out of the area and has older friends, and everybody tells him that they're a bad influence. He's had 8 placements at this point. He's been expelled from his school. He's known to the police. He's currently in residential care. And he's entering specialist foster care. Now, Sam comes to this new foster home and he meets these foster carers. They live in a really nice part of the country. They have an Aga, which is very strange for Sam. He never understands why the oven is always on. They've got a Great Dane that's got a big, deep bark, and a little Chihuahua that's got a small little yap. He remembers the sound of the gravel of the wheels as he pulls into the courtyard towards the barn. And walking into the house rough and ready and prepared for somebody to pull out a rule book or to tell them how things are around here. Sam knows that these people have probably read things about them as well and will have made judgments, and not only that, have probably already decided how they're going to be. And Sam begins to challenge these people, like all young people do. One of the incredible things about young people, when they actually start to challenge you, it's because they feel safe enough to do so. But we often get caught up in the emotions behind it and not the reason for the challenge, just how it makes us feel when it happens. And upon one of these moments where Sam was challenging, and what he'd been doing basically is buying cigarettes and hiding the cigarette packets down the side of his bed, and he comes home one day and all of the cigarette packets are on the table, and the foster carer says, Sam, is there something that you need to tell me? And which I love that phrase, by the way, because I mean, quite clearly the evidence is there. You and I both know that you and I both know. But then also, let's say the evidence wasn't there. When you say, is there something that you need to tell me? What you're trying to do there is get the young person to admit fault, or to kind of say, come on, let's be honest here. I'm going to give you the opportunity to be honest. Young people think about everything they've done wrong this week, and they're trying to identify what you know so that they don't give away anything else. So the response you tend to get is no. So Sam's cornered, and as he's about to kick off, the foster carer catches him and says, Sam, before you kick off, do you know how you get here? Sam says, no. He says, well, let me start by telling you that we trust everybody. Most people in the world, Sam, say you've got to earn their trust, and I'm sure you've been told that before. I don't think you have to earn our trust, Sam. I think that too many people in the past have broken yours, so why should you have to earn something that essentially, in your eyes, in your perspective, through your window, isn't valuable? But trust is valuable, Sam, and we give everybody trust. Most people say you've got to earn it, actually, Sam, because their trust has been broken in the past. And when your trust is broken, it hurts you emotionally. And when things pop up, Sam, you don't lose trust. You just have to work with us to know that we can give you that opportunity back, or that little bit of trust back that happens. You say you're going to spend your pocket money on one thing, you spend it on something else. And I care about your safety, actually, Sam, but we chose you to be here. We get all of these profiles and stories about young people. We're specialist carers, you know, Sam, and we chose you to be here. We were really excited about you being here, actually, and we really wanted you to be here. Sam obviously responds and says, "You're lying, you do it for the money." And they turn around and say, "Do you see my Ferrari parked outside? This is one of the worst paid jobs in the world. We don't do it for money, Sam, we do it because we can." But what did they read? What was Sam's story? His high risk of absconding. A persistent young offender with offences including burglary and affray. Known to deal with drugs and has been caught with drugs at school. Stolen previous foster carer's car in the night. Don't go to sleep. Low attendance at school and is disengaged with other pupils. Has issues with attachment. He isolates himself in his room. We are seeking psychological assessments as we think this links to early childhood trauma. Disruptive behaviour when he is confronted with authority, and his outbursts are hard to control. Struggles to follow simple house rules when living in a foster placement. It's hard to build rapport, as he can be seen as guarded and closed. And Sam is an underachiever. I'm not going to tell you the obvious that's wrong with that. I'm going to tell you something that you may not have thought about before. This obviously needs to change, because when you read this, you will make an assumption and you will make a judgment, because as human beings, that's what we do. You can choose to challenge your initial judgment and your unconscious bias that drives the way in which you think. And see beyond this, but a lot of the times we don't. The worst thing about this whole situation is when, for example, this is given to a foster carer and something pops up and the placement breaks down, the foster carer then starts to see placement breakdown with these particular words, and then sees these particular words attached to particular groups like teenagers, and then starts to say, "We don't look after teenagers." The worst thing about this is that phrase, when you read something like this and you say to yourself, "There's nothing I can do. I don't think I can help." All of that conversation that you have going on in your mind when you read this particular type of language, you start to tell yourself that you cannot do the job that you passionately committed to do. And over time, you just become desensitized. We never really, I don't believe in our sector, we certainly don't do it enough, focus on us. You, the social workers out there sat listening to this. We talk about attachment and loss with young people, and we talk about how that has a huge impact on their mental health and well-being. But a social worker, being a social worker or a foster care for 35 years, goes through significantly more attachment and loss than any child. The relationships apply to you too. But what do you see, and what did these foster carers see when they saw Sam? Sam is high risk of absconding. Well, Sam was actually late home and his foster carers reported him missing. Sam is a persistent young offender with offences including burglary and affray. Sam took his own PlayStation from his dad's house when his dad was at work. His dad found him and attacked him in the street. Known to deal with drugs and has been caught with drugs at school. Well, actually, Sam just tried cannabis with his friends at school. Stolen previous foster carer's car in the night. Sam felt frightened and alone about being in foster care. He took his carer's car to see his mum. He was shaken and deeply regrets his actions. Low attendance at school and is disengaged with other pupils. Well, Sam's been to 11 primary schools. He always feels like he's losing friends. Sam has issues with attachment. Well, Sam's parents rejected him from a young age. He's found it hard to find a settled foster family. He isolates himself in his room. We are seeking psychological assessment as we think this links to early childhood trauma. Sam hides away because everybody keeps reminding him his stepdad beat him. Disruptive behaviour when he's confronted with authority, and his outbursts are hard to control. Sam is always told where to live without being given a choice. It upsets him that he has to move from a settled foster family. Sorry, Sam, I know we want your permanence, but this is a temporary placement. Sam struggles to follow simple house rules when living in a foster family. Sam's lived with so many families, he no longer knows what's right or what's wrong. Do I take my shoes off or do I keep them on? It's hard to build rapport with Sam as he can be seen as guarded and closed. Sam doesn't feel like anybody will ever love him. And Sam is an underachiever. Well, Sam actually became an award-winning social entrepreneur, so nobody ever expected that one, did they? So my call to action at this space is quite simple. If you can do one thing today, after listening to this, is stop seeing behaviour as challenging and start seeing as becoming emotionally overwhelmed. Literally, if you can do that one thing, you will approach situations completely differently. But one of the most difficult things that I see within our sector at the moment is this kind of like rushed mentality. I think from the examples of consultation that I've showed, it shows how we rush things and we don't think things through on an organizational level. But on a personal level with us, we're always responding to things that are going wrong. We're always in that fight and flight mode. We're always approaching things as if they're challenging, as if it's difficult, as if a crisis has happened. When we approach with this in our mind, it will alter the way in which we behave when we get there. We're looking for challenge. Don't be so authoritative. Be more empathetic. Approach a situation with senior young people as becoming emotionally overwhelmed and will change their experience for them. So let's look at how therefore, to finish off, participation can transform lives. And I want to finish off by just explaining one really clear thing. Like, we don't need to sharpen a pencil to improve its ability to draw fine lines. We just change the way we hold it. That's essentially what I'm trying to communicate, is that we don't need to have radical system change. I mean, we probably do, but in this situation here, we don't, what I'm communicating. If we can see things differently, if we can see behaviour as becoming emotionally overwhelmed, if we can approach young people with intention rather than expectation. We can't expect young people to listen, but we can intend to listen. You know, we can't expect young people to achieve everything that they want to achieve, but we can intend to create a platform that gives them the best chance. If we can just change the way we think about things first, if we can challenge our unconscious bias first, and if we can challenge the way in which we engage young people first, it will take us a long way. So I want to explain 3 very clear ways of doing this, and then I'd like to finish off with a story about where Sam is now. So when we're looking at participation for young people, we look at it in 3 ways. Young people must have ownership of their participation. They must choose how they structure that, their terms of reference, and what they do. So young people should be able to control and own how they approach and enter looked after children's reviews. And young people should be able to own exactly what they want to do when it comes to consultation. Otherwise, we're just asking them to do something we want. We need to hand over power. That's quite a scary thing for us to think about. It's very easy to say, let's go and consult with a group of young people. But when we work with organisations, we say, OK, we troubleshoot first. We say, this is the likely thing that's going to come from that group of young people, because we've done this for years. They're likely going to say this to you. What are you going to do about it when they say that? I'm not going to go and consult with young people until we can agree that what power we're going to hand over. Because that's when we get into all sorts of positions and issues where we start to just engage and consult with young people, but do nothing with what they say. So that needs to be agreed first, and then everybody needs to create a clear vision. What is it we all want? We always say the young person's voice is the most important voice. I actually think the young person's voice is an equal voice to everybody else's. So here's some outstanding examples of when participation goes really well following these 3 key principles. The People That Care was a project designed by young people in Oxfordshire where they wanted to show and tell people that they cared about them. They wanted to talk to social workers, to teachers, and they wanted to create videos to say thank you, essentially, to those people that have made a difference in their lives. How many people do you know that leave care and you're still wondering what they're doing now? We have this wonderful issue in our world where we talk about permanence being the most important thing, but our system is not permanent. Young people leave it. It's called leaving care. Not only that, but we talk about relationships being permanent, yet the system does not allow permanent relationships. Social workers and foster carers are often confused when a care leaver tries to add them on Facebook after they've left care. Can I do this? Am I allowed? I'm telling you right now, yes, you are. So these young people wanted to share stories to these people that challenge perceptions, shift cultures, and celebrate outcomes for care experienced young people. And I want to show you a story of a young girl called Fatima.
My name is Fatima. Actually, it's Fatima Tapusora, but preferred Fatima because that makes it easy for people to pronounce. Each and everyone contributes to me becoming who I want to be. With Michelle, she's like my biggest hero. Like, she's very, very helpful to me. She helps me with books that I need desperately. She helps me with people that could help me. You know, the links goes like a connection, a branch, you know. My biggest dream, and has always been, to get into Oxford Uni. Yes. What I'm striving for is helping people generally, because initially I thought like I need to help people and then probably be like a human resource manager and then help employees or stuff. I was like, no, those are like not the kind of people I want to help. I want to like variety of people, especially vulnerable people and people that need representation. In life, before achieving something, you've got things barricading that to happen. So for me personally, I think education. So I'm working very hard to get this education that I need to do what I want to do. Academically, there's so many challenges I've gone through, apart from life experience, basically. Like trying to get things done. I'm not the type that like write things down, like I need to do this, but I just stick them in my head. I think when people are helping me and then they see at the same time I'm putting effort, like appreciating them, giving them the impression that what they're doing is not going in vain, like they're like investing. You might not know what the person is going through, but what you say to them is very, very helpful. So be careful of what you say to people, despite the fact you don't know what they're going through. Stay calm and stay positive. That's the 2 things I would say. What I'll say to you out there watching this, if you're a young person, don't ever think negative about what you want to be. And one big advice I'll give to you, always share that out. You never know the right person that particular dream or aspiration is going to reach and how that person is going to like steer the boat towards you going to your big dream and all. So keep positive and share your aspirations.
This is a young person talking about Michelle, who's the virtual school head in Oxfordshire. And during making this video, Fatima shared with us a dream about going to Oxford Uni. By the time the video had finished, she'd been accepted to study PPE. This was a really clear example of giving young people a platform to share stories, to essentially do what it is that they want to do and resource that. And then being able to use this to go and find tutors within the University of Oxford, show them this work and say, can you please give this person the opportunity to meet with you and to see what happens from there, giving young people ownership over their lives. Second example, which I'm going to whiz through, is Middlesbrough Children Matter. This was a local authority that was in special measures that essentially held its hands out to its organisation and said, look, we really need to do something, and they gave ownership to the whole organisation to create a really clear vision for young people. Their mission was really, really simple. It was to show Middlesbrough children that they mattered. giving over ownership and handing over power. They just said to staff, we want you to develop this vision and we want to create a system for that to happen. It wasn't, can you fill in this survey? It wasn't, this is our vision, can you tell us what you're going to do about it? It was hands open and saying, we really want to know from you what it is that we need to do to ensure that you can show Middlesbrough children that they mattered. They wanted to develop a personality to Middlesbrough Children Matter, which was one of pride, determination and aspiration. They decided to personify who they were. Young people created this whole brand, by the way, this whole design of this that you see is designed by a large group of young people, and they decided that they wanted their logo to tell a story. At the heart of their logo showed love, but the rainbow heart showed individuality and the hug showed holding, so that you could talk about what it actually meant to people that wanted to know how we're showing Middlesbrough children that they matter. And finally, to get this signed off properly, you obviously have to tie this to corporate values. So there was a big piece of work there in showing that how are we going to behave in a particular way that is under our corporate values, which lots of people kind of go, yeah, okay, corporate values, but actually this is how you get power. This is how you really enforce real change, is by putting a golden thread through everything. And this is staff and young people that created this. And this was underpinned by some significant strategy. Young people and staff were involved in all of these things, and you just need to Google Middlesbrough Children Matter to see their website that they created, to understand what real participation can look like and how it can really take a local authority and special measures to a local authority on a vibrant improvement journey. But the final one I want to finish with was a project called the Care Leavers National Movement, which is definitely one of the most innovative projects of its time. It comes from an organisation called the House Project, many of you will know. The House Project is a charity that supports care leavers by giving them a house and a budget to renovate that house, and then they can live in that house once leaving care. It brings young people together in a community of 10 to solve their own problems, and within the charity said that they wanted a group of care leavers to steer the operation of this charity, but they want to hand that ownership over to care leavers. They want care leavers to tell the charity what it is that they want to do, so the charity can action that. So the young people came up with a really clear mission. You know, they want to engage young people throughout the National House Project to share stories of success, highlight system challenges, and to test new ideas that benefit children in care. 3 really clear things that the House Project authored. But not only that, they asked young people if they would design the conference to launch the National House Project, designed the whole thing. And I want to show you this video of Crystal as a comparator to the first video that I showed you. Adam, who I have a lot of compassion for, who walks out of the Education Select Committee, was just not prepared. Adam was a young man that has probably gone to these meetings in life where he sat around people that they don't know and they've asked him difficult questions, and it puts Adam into a space that makes him feel very unsafe, even though he's probably been told he's got nothing to worry about. But Adam's situation isn't unfamiliar. Anybody listening to this speech now put in a similar situation to Adam would feel the anxiety that he felt. It's about preparation. We have to accept that young people are going to leave care. We have to prepare them for that. We have to prepare them for moments in life where they will freeze, they will panic, they will feel anxiety, and they need the strength and the resilience to overcome that.
What we've got, Crystal, is how can living independently support young people with their mental health?
Okay, cool. So, yeah, that didn't go well. Do it.
Go, Crystal!
When you're young and when you're in care, you don't get to be around, well, for me personally anyway, you don't get to be around hope and to be around people showing you or wanting to make you feel like it is going to be okay in the end, and being a part of this group and being a part of the House Project in general, like even having like fortnightly meetings and the idea that people want you to come to these meetups. We don't just have meetups that are like, oh, you know, we have to be here. It's like have a social meetup, go and have food together, go and do whatever it is. Like, a lot of people aren't given hope and aren't given, it's not always about getting it done and, you know, being able to cope and to get on with it. And it's not about that, because if you're living to cope, then why are you living? Do you know what I mean? And I just feel like the vibe with us here is it's not just about coping, it's about wanting to do it and not just getting it done. And I feel like everyone here wants to get it done, and we want to help other people get it done. And I feel like being independent and being a part of a group and being just keeping wanting to get things done. I know I keep saying that, but don't have ideas and then like sit on them and don't let them get anywhere. I feel like we're a group of people here that really want to make a difference and inspire happiness and hope in other people. That's the main thing, is let other people know. If you know how, I know why I'm happy and I know why I'm still breathing and I know why I want to get where I want to get. So you need to help other people find their reason. And I think that was a bit of a tangent, but yeah.
Careless national movement, from a group of young people who would be considered didn't engage, to a movement that's leading a national campaign to end digital poverty. I'm sure you've all heard of the digital poverty campaign. It was instigated by the Care Leavers National Movement. So to finish off, what are we hearing here? There's moments that you can provide to children now that they will listen to, but we'll hear them in the future. Listening and hearing is two completely different things. You can say things to children now knowing that they're not going to absorb it and take it on board, but you know that in some point in their life they will reflect back, because we all do that. We all at some point in our life come to a time where we choose to let our experiences define us, or we choose to define our experiences. And the only way in which we can allow our experiences, we can choose to define them, is if we've got people that have helped us see things differently. Sam was on his own in 15 years old, living in bed and breakfast. Everybody in Sam's world had gone. Sam sat and looked back on his life and remembered people. He remembered Bob, who told him that he'd do really well in the forces. He remembered his foster carers that told him that they trust everybody and that they chose him to be there. Sam also got a phone call from his social worker at the time while he was thinking these things, and his social worker quite plainly said, "Do you remember that foster carer that chose you to be there? They've got accommodation now attached to their house and they want you to have it. It's a new scheme. It's called supported lodgings." Sam was picked up pretty much instantly by his social worker from the bed and breakfast and is driving towards his foster carer's house. And this thing that young people often don't have the experience to do is to feel like they want to apologise. And just bear with me a second. While Sam's driving all the way to the house of the foster carer, the only thing that's going through Sam's mind at this point is, I messed this up. I did so much stuff wrong. And he remembers back to the time of leaving that foster home and when his foster carer closed the door to the car and said, "Sam, if there's one thing I want you to remember about being here, is that we chose you to be here and you're choosing to leave." This rings and rings and rings and rings through Sam's mind, and he never ever has the opportunity to communicate back to those people how he sees things differently now, how he's chose to define his experiences, and he wants to thank them and apologise. And how to say that is going through his mind as he hears the gravel on the wheels of the car as it approaches the barn, as he hears the deep bark of the Great Dane and the little yap of the Chihuahua, as he walks into the kitchen and sees the male foster carer against that oven that's always on, and as he looks at the foster carer to speak his apology, and the first thing she says is, "Welcome home. We're happy you chose us this time." I want to thank everybody for listening today. It's been a real pleasure to be here. and to share this story with you. But before I finish, I just want to draw everyone's attention, because it might confuse you otherwise, is that we've completely rebranded. So if you go to our website, which is thecareleaders.co.uk, you'll see that the brand is completely different, and it's launched today. I wanted to launch it at Social Work Week at this particular speech, and there's a piece of training if you're interested in attending it, which is on the website, which is called A Journey Through Care, looking at a young person's story from entering care all the way through to leaving care, which is on the process of becoming CPD accredited. So thank you very much for listening. I'm going to stop talking now and hand over to Social Work England.